So why don't we start in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. So this is just a kind of a larky class on discussing any theological implications of movies. But I want to start off with two things. One, the power of story. You know, Catholics and Jews believe in the power of story, that they can change you. And they actually have discovered that logical arguments don't change people. What changes people morally is a great story. And so movies, and we're just going to discuss the movies of 2019, movies, plays, TV shows, they are modern day pulpits. They are, the stories they tell are preaching a message. They're changing the way we think. And so we'd say entertainment is not completely mindless. It is forming a perspective of the world. Even like fables, I mentioned this before, they did this study on fables that you tell children, and it affects the way that children think. So like, it sounds strange, in Russia, they tell fables to children that the wolf is at the door, it's going to eat you, and life just is terrible. So optimistic. In China, the fables that they tell their children is that if you work hard, you can achieve anything. And movies are fables that we tell ourselves. They're fables that we really tell our children. So, and it forms the way they think. And if you don't think movies make a big difference, there was this documentary that was made by this Pakistani woman on honor killings. So honor killings are when either a father or uncle kills their daughter because they believe they shamed the family. So they put this documentary out about honor killing. And the amazing part is when the leader of the Pakistan saw it, he decided to change the law. So the law was changed because of a great documentary. Now, it really hasn't done away with honor killings, but at least it changed the clock, or the temperature. Sorry, I had a lack of sleep last night. So, but the film did a great job of not only exposing honor killings, but change some men's attitudes so that they defend women rather than think they have a right to kill. So stories change the way we see the world. And it's just so Jewish and Catholic. And you could say, well, the stories, they're just stories that have nothing to do with God. Do you know in the Bible, the book of Esther, which is a great story, the book of Esther never mentions the name of God. We write it in English, but technically God is never mentioned. Isn't that kind of shocking? Where it's really the story of God without God's name ever being mentioned. The story teaches a morality, but doesn't really mention the name of God. And the point is that some stories may never mention the name of God, but they have something to do with it. Like, for me, I know this is one of the movies I really love is Gran Torino. I do, but like I just think it's amazing where this old man ends up dying for these foreigners that he at first disliked. And when he dies, and he dies in the shape of the cross for people who are not his own. He did see do you remember, if you saw the movie, you saw his children are at Mass at the funeral for his wife, and they're disrespectful and self-involved, and he found these other people to be more like him, even though they're completely different, and he ends up dying for them. He's this Christ-like figure that really says something about the Gospels. So what are movies teaching our culture? How is it a reflection of our culture? So just want to start with some opening comments, and then we'll get to the movies, and that was just a pre-opening comments. But like, to be honest, this is the sad part, I didn't think there was that many great movies this year. First of all, I'd say most of them are sequels. I don't have a problem with sequels, but why so many sequels? And the reason why I think is, one is that I just think it shows a lack of creativity in our culture. There seems to be a lack of originality, so many movies just go for sequels. Now, is it just because it's for sure money maker that you don't have to think to make up a story? You already got a loyal audience. Is it like meeting an old friend, or is it just lack of imagination? Personally, to be honest, I suspect that Hollywood does far too much pot and their IQ has been lowered. And I'm kind of joking and not joking, because pot does lower people's IQ. And my joke is that if you want to go broke, open up a bookstore in LA or Miami, because those people don't read. So the other problem I have is that oftentimes the sequels don't follow the philosophy of the original movies that made them successful. Like Star Wars, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. But the last two, The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, it wasn't true to the canon of the previous movies. The previous movies, for you to become a Jedi, it takes years of self-discipline and training. Now in the last two ones, you just have to really get emotional, and then you'll have power. There's no self-discipline or training, and technically in the old movies, without training, just to get emotionally angry about something, that leads to the dark side, not the Force. So they've kind of completely flipped it. But anyhow, the other thing is that sequels are really easy movies. And I saw the movies like Aladdin or these other ones. It's a big movie maker, Lion King, because did you know, like in Hollywood, writers are very expensive. But if you make a remake of a movie that was animated from animation to something else, you don't have to pay the writers. So no, it's you only get the royalties if it's in the same venue. So if you go from animation to live action, you don't have to pay the writers. So it's, to me, kind of greed and lack of intelligence. The other thing that, or lack of creativity. The other thing that really bothers me is a lot of movies now have kind of this theme of being anti-law or anti-rule. And it's funny because I just gave a homily on Mary being the spark of rebellion. But but that's not really anti-law. And Michael Lewis, if you know who he's a writer, he wrote Liar's Poker, Moneyball, The Big Short, Blind Side, The Fifth Risk, very smart. And he says creative people tend to think outside the box, but inhibit the rules. So there's a difference between being creative and thinking outside the box and being anti-law. People who are anti-law, they're not creative, but they like to think that they are. There's a shallowness that they don't respect law and order. And I also find there's this dismissiveness that you're just too important to obey law and order. Well, really, that's a type of superficiality. So I just think there's too many movies and TVs that, like I just got Netflix a couple months ago. And you know when you flip through and like, would I want to watch that? And it's like, it's so funny. Like, in a world gone mad, she is willing to break the rules. They're all like, everything's about them. He's gone rogue. Or does that mean like, well, that's an original one. I just think it's kind of funny. And it's always dystopic. I'll get into like the world's going to hell in a handbasket and somebody's willing to break the rules. You know what I love is, did anybody see the BBC Masterpiece Theater Endeavor? Yes. Oh, I love Endeavor. It's smart. But Endeavor, he actually achieves things by being really smart and idealistic. He won't compromise his values.
What I like about Endeavor is that it's such the opposite of so many other TV/movies where you achieve by always breaking rules. So, secondly, I think there's kind of this anti-law thing going on. Third, I notice there's this more trend of being unreligious. Not just unreligious, I should have said anti-religious. And it's continuing, like the movie Unbroken. He's unbroken because he had this conversion to Christ. But Christ, religion, was never mentioned in the movie. They made this movie called Noah, and guess what? It has nothing to do with religion or God. Like, I think that was part of the original story. Or there's a movie now about Tolkien. Like, I'm a big Tolkien fan, right? In Tolkien, his mother and his family suffered for being Catholic. They converted to Catholicism. He went to daily mass. Catholicism was a huge part of his life. He came up with these stories of a way of teaching theology to children without mentioning God. So in the movie about his life that's out, his own family disavowed the movie because they never brought up Catholicism, which was very important to him, his faith, and then they changed things. They edited things. Like, he did fall in love with his wife, and they had a great marriage, but they changed the whole story, and they edited out religion. I just think Hollywood is very anti-religious. You can only tell a story if it doesn't mention God. The other fourth point, have you ever noticed movies now, you're fated, and just the role of fate, you're fated for violence and victory. Now, I mention that because Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control you, and then you'll call it fate. That's a great line. Your unconscious, your greed, your violence, until you make it conscious, it will control you, and then you'll call it fate. And so sometimes people like to call it fate and say, I had no choice. No, you chose that violence a long time ago, and you just didn't want to admit it. It's a choice because you refuse to acknowledge it but let it control you. And just interesting, when the Roman Empire was declining, if you notice in their literature and plays, they emphasize more and more the role of the fates in their storytelling. So, you're just doomed this way. It worries me that so many movies emphasize the role of fate, that you had no choice. Lotus had to get violent. I just think that's kind of horrible. And yes, something tragic happens to the character, but the only way the movie sets it up is that they're forced to be violent. But we're not defined by what happens to us. We're defined by how we choose to become. Violence is what we do when we don't know what to do with our own suffering. Or it promotes this idea that you have the right to hate. That these violent movies have the idea that you have the right to hate. That's a problem I had with the 3 Billboards. Or look at the movie, and honestly, I can go to a movie and enjoy it, and then afterwards dissect it in my head. So, like, I saw the movie Cold Pursuit. Anybody see the movie Cold Pursuit?
Yeah.
Okay, got me a thrill, but wow, was that violent. Or any of the superhero movies. The villains are always defined as so evil that it's permissible to be violent against them. In real life, I've known a lot of villains. They're never completely evil. People are really hard to hate when you get close up. When you really know somebody's life, they might be screwed up and have some anger issues, just saying. But if you move in, there's more to them than that. And I just like this quote from James Baldwin. I imagine the reason people cling so stubbornly to their hatred is because they sense that when the hate is gone, they'll have to deal with their own pain. I think that's kind of true. Like in Cold Pursuit, he loses his son, and rather than mourn, he just goes on this tirade of violence. But we're not defined by what happens to us, but what we choose to become. Violence is what you do when you don't know what to do with your own pain and suffering. So I just think there's all this overemphasis in suffering. Also, in the idea of fate and violence, you're fated for victory, you're fated for violence. Fated for victory, that's to me the movie Aquaman, which I enjoyed the movie. But did you watch the movie Aquaman? Yes. It has this theme, it's always a theme, that this character has no self-discipline, no intellectual training. He's kind of an idiot, but he's fated to win because he had the right parents. He came from the right family. That's the storyline. And so he's an idiot, he lacks self-discipline, but hey, he's cute, and he had the right parents. And so he's entitled to win. That's a story that we're telling children, not, self-discipline, intelligence wins out, but coming from the right family. That's the role of fate. My fifth one is dystopia. It's the opposite of a utopia. Have you ever noticed how many movies are dystopic? Yet we live in one of the most affluent societies in history, and yet our storyline is always dystopic. Do you know what I mean by that, or anybody confused? Yes, Mary. Dystopic is the opposite of utopia. Utopia is when everything's perfect. Dystopia is, it's kind of like living in California.
They're all moving here.
Just kidding. Joking. Edit that out. It's like post-World War II, everything, it's like living in the Dark Ages. Why is it that we have the most sophisticated, technological, highest standard of living, and yet our fantasies are always dystopic? Not always, but just check Netflix. Like I was trying to find something to watch, and it was always, in a broken world, and things gone bad, and this is not that I'm always against that, but so many. And here's the odd part. I have a theory. Can you guys stand my theory? I think people are fantasized with dystopia when they realize their ideology has gone wrong. And what I mean by that is this. So I went to Mount Angel, lack of sleep, seminary. Next word. And there's a monastery right next to it. Love the monastery. And one of the monks told me the story that during the 60s, he belonged to this monastery, a different place, and this hippie compound started right next to it. And they believe in free love and all this stuff. So the hippie compound that believes in love, but free love, and the monastery that believes in law and order and love. So that they'd meet at the fence sometimes and talk. Well, the funny part was, after a couple months, this compound of free love, they're all fighting and they're having these 8-hour meetings on how to get along. And the monk said, we could show you how to live in a commune. We've been doing it for 1,500 years. But I like how it goes from hippie, utopia, free love to this, everybody ends up fighting and hating each other. And the odd part is that if you ever study kind of the history of hippie compounds, they're not really that new. It always ends up the same way, in this real hatred towards each other. That if you really had no values that centered the whole community other than the superficial, you'll end up really hating. Did you guys hear that silverware company? I think it's Oneida? Oh, you guys do know that? Oh, do you guys know the story of Oneida? Oh, hippie. So it's a silverware company, and it started out as this free love utopia. And one of the things they believe is that if you could have enough sex, you wouldn't die. Not really sure where they gave that cut there. So they're kind of this really much older hippie compound. And of course, it didn't turn out well. So they paid off the other members of the commune. They continued to make silverware, but then they became this very capitalistic, urbane company that's in it for making a profit. So the complete opposite of how they started. Or Jamestown. You know Jamestown? Jamestown, it started out when they settled, they decided that they'd share everything alike. You know that story, right? Yeah. They'll share, it didn't turn out too well. They thought they'd just share everything, that we'll just live as a commune. And guess what they discovered? Some people don't work. And then there's a famine. And then the people that worked hard and that didn't work hard get the same amount. So after that, they changed, which I just think is kind of funny. So, I learned that in high school. My joke is, and this is my personal joke, but my joke is this, I never liked in high school when they'd say, all right, now you guys are going to do this project together and everybody gets the same grade. Hated that. Because you know what would happen? Half the people would work, and there's always, no offense, somebody who is just willing to not do it. They'll take a D and be happy. And I hated that in college and high school. So my joke is, in high school, I learned to hate socialism. Because it makes you, if everybody shares, and I think we should be generous and share, I really do. But kind of the commune lifestyle always ends up in this, without any real foundation. We just say, well, we're just all going to share. But if everybody doesn't have the idea that you try your best, you forgive, you get along, every commune is going to turn into something dystopic. Does that make any sense? And my theory is maybe there's so many dystopic movies made out there because the ones making the movies, they fell into this idea that, unity is really easy. It can be based on just your feelings. Does that make any sense? Did anybody else notice how many dystopic movies, or is that just me, and shows? Other than Maggie and I. Nobody?
Never thought about it that way.
Well, yeah, okay, look at it. So let's go through the movies. And the big movie this year, it was Avengers. Do you know that?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So I thought it was I know it sounds kind of strange, but I think we can talk about it. The Avengers wrapped up, there's 22 movies in that line. Do you know how much a big money maker that was? Yeah. That was a capstone. And I loved Avengers, but I just kind of love all those movies where there's this, I love Spider-Man, not that I want to be him, just because, those high-flying acrobatics and don't you wish you could kind of do that? I do. There's kind of this beautiful choreography of twists and turns. But, so part of me just likes, the Pope once said, not only should we be moved by the deep, but sometimes we need to play in the shallows. But that was Paul VI. But one of the themes in Avengers was self-sacrifice, which Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, that was one of the things I thought children need to learn, is you sacrifice yourself for others. And so, oddly enough, I did like it because I thought it had this theme of self-sacrifice to a very entitled younger generation. I think teaching them self-sacrifice. Iron Man sacrifices himself. Black Widow sacrifices himself. But the really odd part, and I found this really odd, Captain America, who symbolizes law and order, and you have to know this, in one of the first Avengers movie, he says to Tony Stark, who's incredibly selfish, you're not the type that would ever sacrifice yourself for others. Because Tony Stark is very selfish. But in this movie, it's Tony Stark who sacrificed himself to save others. It was Captain America who really chose to live for himself. Did you notice that at the end? Like, he goes back in time to live with the love of his life, which is fine. But it was Captain America who didn't sacrifice himself, and it was Tony who did. I just thought that was a really interesting twist. Anybody else have any opinions on that?
So I just watched the one that everybody turns into dust randomly.
Yeah, that's the first one.
Oh, so I haven't seen the other one. So Doctor Strange,
Mm-hmm.
the one with Kate Wright,
Mm-hmm.
he sacrifices himself.
Well,
Because
okay.
he makes the decision that he knows he's going to die, so that because he went through every scenario in his mind.
But see, I don't really consider that self-sacrifice because he went through the scenario the one way he's going to live.
But he dies.
He comes back, and he knew it. He knew it. He does. Yeah, but he knew he was going to come back.
Just gave me a spoiler. I haven't seen the other
He
one
literally
yet.
said it's the one way that's going to win.
You haven't said spoiler on the first one. Oh my gosh. Oh.
Okay. Bruce Willis is dead in The Sixth Sense. Yes.
In light of the fact that he knew he was dying.
Yeah. True self-sacrifice means there's no way I'm going to win. I will sacrifice myself for others. Yeah.
It kind of takes him down a notch or two. If you know you're dying of cancer, his days are numbered.
Well, that's true. I never thought of that. No, that's true. I don't care. Get out. How dare you put down Gran Torino? Carol, throw him out. No, you're right. I never thought of that. He is dying of. But you know, aren't we all, like, this is, we're all dying. Like, somebody just got diagnosed with ALS, 45. You know what the doctor said? Well, that's your death sentence. And they were kind of shocked that, like, that. My dad died of ALS. It's not a death sentence. It's a hard life, but it can still be a really good life. But sometimes, like, cancer and that stuff wakes you up that maybe we're all going to die. You might as well die for something important. So. Okay, yes.
One more thing. Have you watched the new Robin Hood? Anybody watched the new Robin
I saw it, but I didn't like it. Just
I
the.
didn't like it either. It's awful.
I saw the previews, but
It's against the Catholic Church. It's a new one.
oh, it's anti-religious? Huh. Wow. She was talking about Robin Hood was very anti-religious and very not even like I know it's so unhistorically correct too. But the other problem I little have with the superhero movies is, and this is gonna sound, I'm gonna say this and people are gonna get upset. So oh well. Like, I love female heroines. Like, I really like Black Widow or Scarlet Witch. I forget her name. Like, I like those feminine heroes because they teach women to be bold, but not so much in the Avengers. But have you noticed other ones that are coming out in movies? The female characters, for them to be strong, they have to be macho. Yeah. I don't think a woman has to be macho to be strong. Does that make any sense? Like, I know that I'm very judgmental, but when girls are wearing sleeves, and you don't have to dress like that to be feminine. And I just think there's a strange loss of feminine in a lot of these action movies. You can be incredibly tough without having to be macho. Does that make any sense? I just. Anyhow, I'm not saying they shouldn't, like, and I come from, like, this sounds strange. I mean, now I have to back up. I come from a family where my dad, he was from Butte, And as little kids, he made us, like I'm talking kindergarten, know how to box. And so in the morning at the breakfast table, you know, he'd hold out his hands. So you didn't do that, did you? But so like you know, and even for my sisters, he would say, "Oh no, you have to put more shoulder into it. You know, you have to, yeah." Because, and he told I was shocked. He says, "No, I'll guarantee you, someday some man is going to try something, and giggling will not help. There'll come a point in which you have to defend yourself, and when you do, you throw everything at him." Like that part, I'm all for. Does that like? So I think women should be able to be smart, but you don't have to be macho to be strong. That's just the movie. So anything else about the Avengers game? Or
I think the Disney animated ones exemplify that. Come to mind Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid.
They're all female.
Yeah, there's probably a half a dozen or more where the women are strong, but
Yeah.
they're not macho.
yeah, you can be strong and even be a fighter, but you don't have to be. To be strong does not mean to be macho. And you're right. Disney, I think, does that myself. Yeah.
FYI, the new James Bond is a African American woman. Just
Yep, yep.
You know, I don't have a problem with that. Except if she wants to, like, if she's gonna be a woman, great. But I have no problem with it. Great. But my question is she gonna act like, you know, Sylvester Stallone, or then it just becomes unbelievable. So another example I hate to, is like Aladdin. I know I think about problems. I just dissect things, and I watched Aladdin and liked it. But like, did you notice? Did anybody else see it besides me? Okay.
Are you talking about the new one?
Yeah. My problem with it is this. They changed little things. Like Jasmine, she's very, very wealthy. She's a wealthy princess. And she goes out among the crowds and she steals bread to give to a poor kid. Now, is that kind or not? So she steals bread to give to the, and then the storekeeper gets upset. She is literally dripping with jewelry. And she argues with the storekeeper that this kid needs bread. Well, he does need bread, right? But you couldn't think about giving up part of your jewelry? Why does it? But no, but like for younger generations, they'd say, "Oh, that's so." She cares about social justice. You have jewelry on. You're a princess. You can pay it. It just reminds me of people who drive sports cars, but then go to the food bank. Or college kids who have the latest iPhone and spring vacation in Cancun, but they want the government to pay for their student loans. You know, the storekeeper, he's not an evil figure. He's just trying to feed his family. You have jewelry. And then there's this other part that I thought was strange in the movie, just on women's rights, where in the new movie, they add this position that Jasmine says that she has a right to rule. I believe that because I really am a feminist. I believe women and men should have equal rights. But here's the problem. What I didn't like is twice Jasmine sings this song. And she sings this song, quote unquote, "I won't be silent anymore." However, she was never silent before this. She was always quite vocal about what she wanted to rule, and who she's going to marry. And yet she sings, "You can't shut me up anymore. I won't be silent. You can't keep me quiet." Like, she's not an oppressed victim of society. You know, the poor are. And there's plenty of victims in the movies who are oppressed, widowed, the poor, the orphaned. She lives in opulent splendor and sings a song that she's a victim. It just strikes me as not only just self-absorbed, but I just couldn't relate. Does that make any? Is that why you hated that song?
I thought it was just all hashtag Me Too. They stuck it in there because of all this hashtag Me Too stuff. Like,
I won't be silent. You can't keep me silent. I'm a princess. You're right.
Political stuff right in my face. Here's my kids. Like,
It's also
I don't need that.
hashtag Eve in Garden of Eden.
Well, I don't know about that, but I don't like it. Was just had this small sub theme of I like a female heroine. That's not my point, but like you won't keep me silent. You won't pay for the bread, but you think the storekeeper should give it away. And here's the other point. If you really look at the movie, the point of the movie wasn't that the important thing in life is justice. The point of the movie is that the important thing in life is power and wealth. You're just kind of seduced into liking Jasmine and Aladdin. But morally, how are they any superior? What's the difference between Jafar, the evil character, and Aladdin? Now, granted, the king is incompetent, but Jafar and Aladdin are the same character. They're both smart, they're both resourceful, they both come from the underclass, both are trying to get power and wealth. None of them shows to be more of a lover of justice than the other. You're just set up to like Aladdin. Does that make sense? Anyhow, I didn't find that heroic. Then there's, okay, so enough with the animations. Anybody has opinions?
Well, Ken and Leslie wanted to know your thoughts on Shazam. I have not read it.
Mm.
There's 7, she said something about the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah, I haven't seen, anybody else seen Shazam? I read the reviews. I have a donut, so. Shazam is another one. Shazam I kind of like because he battles this character that has the 7 deadly sins. And Shazam, one of his powers is the wisdom of Solomon, which I didn't really notice. I didn't know that growing up. But not as he's super strong and shoot electricity. If he wants, he can use the wisdom of Solomon. And this one character, I just read the review, I didn't see it. He has the 7 deadly sins, so he's unconquerable. So there's no way Shazam can beat him. But so he has the 7 deadly sins, but he has to keep one within himself, and the other 6 can go out and wreak havoc. And so how he tries to battle the 7 deadly sins with all his might and power and can't. Finally, he uses the gift of the wisdom of Solomon, and he says to the character, jealousy is the one deadly sin that he kept to himself to keep him invulnerable, while the other ones went out and wreaked havoc. So suddenly Shazam says, oh, poor jealousy, never everybody thinks of you, you have to stay home while everybody else goes out, and he does this thing of, woe is you, yeah, and jealousy comes out and makes the guys vulnerable and they kill him. So the point of the movie is that it's wisdom that's stronger than, shooting lightnings or Superman. So I didn't see it, but I thought that was a clever, yeah, back there.
What are your thoughts on the Left Behind series in the Rapture?
Oh, I hate it. Because Rapture and Left Behind, it has the same way you can have like the book of Esther that never mentions the same name of God, that is all about God. The Left Behind series mentions God a lot in the Bible a lot. But it uses it a lot, but none of it's really from the Bible. Nowhere in the Bible do you find rapture. The idea of rapture is not in the Bible. The idea of rapture started with this preacher from Michigan. For God's sakes, Michigan. Has anything ever come out? Miriam March just got up and left. You put down Green Bay, you've gone too far. But it's a very modern idea. There's nothing scriptural about rapture. So the same way you can use the Bible in the name of God a lot doesn't mean any of it is really about God. So I hate those movies because they're so unscriptural. They're so 2,000 years of history, you don't have this theology of rapture. And for the ones who say it's got to be in the Bible, rapture's not in the Bible. It twists a lot of the Bible phrases. So I think just because somebody, anyhow. That's my theory. Yes, Mrs. Allen.
So I've noticed, it seems like the last couple of years especially, that they will, in Hollywood, stories will insert a piece of conversation that has nothing to do with the plot or the story, but it's anti-religious.
Oh, so what she noticed on this anti-religious scene is that, and this is very true, they'll have an arc of a story, and at one point they'll just insert something that's anti-religious. Doesn't really have to do with everything else, but there's always some dialogue that's anti-religious. I find the same thing.
Or anti-Catholicism.
Anti-religious, anti-Catholicism, yeah. I just think, mine is, another one is just the violence, like I mentioned Cold Pursuit. I think we're making ourselves more violent by the stories we tell. Cold Pursuit, this father wants to, and I have to admit, I kind of get off on it, let's face it. One of my addictions is anger. But, so this father goes on this rampage of killing everybody because his son was killed, but has this really odd ending where the head of the drug cartel, this old man, and the father, who's an old man, as everybody's just killing themselves, they just look at what a beautiful day it is. They look at what a beautiful day it is, and they just walk away from the violence. The father, he returns back to being a plowman, as everybody's just dying and killing around. You lit the fuse, and then suddenly you're telling me, when you're in your 60s, at a life of drug dealing and violence, just notice how beautiful it is outside. Like, that's supposed to be this religious aha that they have. The problem is, have you ever known anybody to do that? Go on up, like, I mean, I don't know that kind of life, but you do. After years of selling drugs and killing people, did you just one day notice how beautiful the world is? You know what they, you know what they did find is this, and I think this is just me preaching against myself, or to myself. What they found with anger is, with anger or violence, you always have to get more and more angry. Because if I get angry and this happens, and yell at you and chew at you, you know, when I calm down, I'm going to have terrible regret. That, why did I say that? The only way out of that is if I chew you out, if I keep stroking myself to be angry, then I can avoid the feeling of regret. I don't have to really look. So this is a strange thing. If you're going to get angry and avoid regret, just keep upping the anger. Does that make sense? Because then you don't really have to be responsible and look at yourself. So the idea that suddenly they'll just look at how beautiful the day is and be spiritual, I just thought that was so untrue and phony. The opposite is true. The more violence you commit, the more addicted you get to violence or anger.
I just want to inform you, there's 4 more movies like that with Liam Neeson in it, so you've seen the most recent ones. So good luck with that. And they're all the same.
All taken.
Yeah.
I have a set of particular skills.
Have you ever noticed how Hollywood is not pro-Catholic, but whenever they're having a ceremony, like a marriage or a funeral, it's always a Catholic altar. You ever notice that?
That is true. I have not noticed that.
It's always the Catholic.
Yeah, but that's because we're probably the largest. Like, nobody knows what the Shakers do. And I'm not against Shakers, but like, Catholicism is 2,000 years and the largest denomination in the world. So, you know, it's the easiest one for people to know what, you know, have some semblance.
Your gangster's funeral.
Gangster's funeral.
I know this is an old movie and I haven't watched it because I'm afraid to watch it, but can you talk about the Da Vinci Code?
No, that's not 2019, so I didn't talk about it. I never saw it because it was so, not anti-Catholic. My first thing was that it was anti-history.
Yeah, I think that's why I didn't watch it because there's so much negativity about it.
So speaking of negativity, oh yeah, go ahead. Guy from Michigan.
Rhode Island.
Oh, okay. Well, then you can speak.
Came here from Pasadena. You
Well, I'm Irish. I always look at the problems first. Yeah, okay, so my uplifting movie is this. I love movies. But, so, I thought this was I'll tell you my uplifting movies. One is that Green Book. I loved Green Book. It's a kind movie. It has some subtle humor to it. It does promote, this political agenda, the value of a multicultural community. But I love it how the theme is loyalty breeds more loyalty. That's what I got out of it. Nothing.
That was a wonderful.
It's a story of this man overcoming his bigotry against blacks, and then at the end offering his own family as shelter. So it's the opposite of the movies that say I have a right to hate. It takes this internal journey where, this Italian character, he ends up being a shelter. And just the title, The Green Book. You know what The Green Book was? It's in the movie, where it's this road trip, right? The movie's this road trip with humor. It's driving Miss Daisy, except now it's Italian. And the Italian becomes a goel. And if you're wondering what a goel is, just real quick, goel is this biblical concept that God makes some people with a little bit more steel. God makes some people, I really do believe this. God makes some people stronger to defend the weak. I am not a goel, but I have known some. And this Italian character, he's a bigot, but he really loves his family. And it's based on a true story told by his son. And Green Books were written so that blacks, it was written by this guy in New Jersey, listing all the places that you can stay and get food if you're black and not get lynched. So a Green Book is where it's safe to stay. So this Italian takes this black musician who is the complete opposite of himself.
Classy. He was really classy.
He was classy, effeminate, arrogant, talented, and the Italian, he knows how to manipulate. He's unafraid, and throughout the journey, he ends up. The real Green Book is not the book of where to stay. The Green Book is the Italian. I just love that idea that this Italian not only gives up his prejudice, but in the very end, the place that he's going to stay for shelter is the Italian's family. I just thought it was just such a really great story.
I thought it was interesting that the piano player chose him.
Yeah.
In an interview, he chose him to be the driver. Did he choose someone?
That is a great line. The piano player, the singer, he chose the Italian, but in the end, it's the Italian who chose him. So, go ahead.
Did you see Hidden Figures?
Yes, I loved Hidden Figures, but that was last year. That has been. But loved Hidden Figures. I'm just trying to stick with 19. What's that?
Wind River and Get Out.
I didn't see Get Out or Wind River. Another ones that were good movies. Why'd you like them?
Well, Get Out is a movie that I could never see what was going to be next, what was coming next. It was unbelievably suspenseful.
How many people here saw Get Out? Liked it? Oh, Get Out. Okay, I have to see that one. And Wind River, I never heard that one.
Wind River is about the whole story takes place on the Wind River Indian Reservation, and it's about young women who go missing, particularly in Native American cultures, and disappear without a trace. And that's the idea of the movie. But there was one particularly violent scene in this, so you probably like that.
Well, I'll see it. But here's something you mentioned. Have you noticed, like for me, the movies that I really liked, which is Green Book, based on a true story, Black Klansman, which I don't know if you saw that one. It actually was kind of funny and good, but it was based on a true story. And then he just mentioned two others based. No, Get Out is not true, but Wind River or Hidden Figures based on true story. I just find reality to be far more uplifting than the fantasies. Like,
What about Best of Enemies?
oh, Best of Enemies. I didn't see that one, but I read it. Well, I'm waiting for it to come on the rentals.
Yes.
But Best of Enemies, another true story one, has a great story. I read it, where this leader, the local KKK leader, and this black woman, they are bitter enemies. But they end up, he gets converted. And if you watch interviews of the original woman, this black woman, she has this conversion too. She was filled with just as much hate as he was. And they come together. So, I can't wait to see Best of
And then
Enemies.
they toured the country giving lectures for like 30 years.
30 years ago. I know, you can go on YouTube and watch their lectures, but I didn't see that one because you'd have to buy the movie to watch it, and I'm not doing that. But their lectures are really good. And I thought it's good because he was a bigot, and she was a type of bigot because she was filled with a lot of anger. And she was black, but it doesn't mean that she didn't have anger issues. But it's a great story.
Netflix.
No, it's not on Netflix.
You can order the DVD.
I'm not ordering a DVD. Would I? No, you can't. It's not on Netflix yet.
Yeah, but it's like $3.99 and he's not gonna spend money.
What do you think? I made of money, for God's sakes? $3.99. Ridiculous, Greg.
It's at the library. No, it's library.
I'll wait till Netflix. What's that? Oh, I never heard of the movie Upside. Upside?
It's a true story.
How many people have heard of the movie Upside?
The Upside. The Upside. That was good.
What's it about?
Oh, yeah. The black guy is quadriplegic. It's really good.
Another true story? Now, isn't that odd that all the great movies, a paraplegic who hires a guy, a quadriplegic who hires a guy, and after that I couldn't hear because people were talking. Ex-fighter? Ex-con. Ah. So the quadriplegic hires an ex-con, probably from Michigan, who,
Who took care of him?
well, once again, why is it reality has more hope than the fantasy movies?
Because you see the end of it, and they showed who the real people are.
No, I think the reason why is that the fantasies lets go of our, is not always bad, but fantasy, I think in this culture, people are dark. I think reality is where you find the light. So.
Not a new movie, but Magnificent Seven. It's been recently on Netflix, and it's very violent, but it's good versus evil.
Yeah, the problem is that, like I told you, I have a problem where you make your enemy completely evil. Rarely is any, except for Satan and maybe the Kardashians. No, like, that's what I like about Green Book. You think that Tyler's a bad guy, but he turns out to be a good guy. He's not a bad guy, but, okay, so when you say uplifting movies, to be honest, all those I would love to see. But I find it really interesting that I find the uplifting movies to be the reality ones. Another sequel, but I thought it was, no, this is embarrassing. I went to the movies with a friend, and the movie we were watching, within 10 minutes, I was like, oh, this is awful. And he said the same thing, and I've never done this before. I still feel kind of guilty. But no, worse. His wife and her friend were in A Star Is Born, and so he says, well, just want to go see Star Is Born? I said, well, we didn't pay for that movie. And he says, we still paid for a movie. And I was like, that's still legally not contract we made. He says, well, let's just go. So we walked into Stars Born. It was empty seat. But I was so surprised because I never saw the first movie, but I was shocked how much I loved Stars Born. I had to kind of figure out why did I like it, and I liked it for this reason. And this is gonna sound strange, but like the guy, he was a very broken figure. At age 13, he starts to drink with his father. He's a drunk. But at the end, she sings a song, how much she loved him. And this is what I like about it. Like, my dad was an alcoholic. And, well, he got cleaned up, but, like, even when my dad was just so difficult to live with, I still loved him. My close friends, their son was schizophrenic, committed suicide. Billy, I still love Billy. If you can love somebody who's completely broken and love them. And so, like, he does commit suicide, but she sings a song how much she loved him. And I was like, that is real to me, that you can love somebody despite them being a laughing stock and an embarrassment and a weight around you, and yet you did fully love them. So I had never seen the movie before, but I thought it was. I also thought the foreshadowing, because when he walks into a bar where he meets her, and the neon sign of the bar is the hangman, which is foreshadowing of his suicide at the end of the movie. But I overthink things. So, but I was like, I know that feeling where you can love somebody where everybody else says he's a dead weight, he's a laughing stock, and you love the person. It's heartbreaking, but I love people who are broken, despite their brokenness. It's illogical, but I thought the movie played it out.
I also appreciated that he wasn't just a total jerk either. He had some really great characteristics about him too. He was still a good man, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he was broken, but he was a good man. Billy, schizophrenic, very difficult, but fiercely loved his family. My dad, he was a jerk, but an alcoholic, but he was Irish.
That makes him okay.
Bohemian Rhapsody, I did see that one. I thought it was really good, but so sad. My all-time favorite movie this year, Green Book is one of my favorite movies. My other favorite movie is Unplanned. Anybody see the movie Unplanned? I thought there's a lot of wisdom. Once again, based on the true story, a lot of wisdom. Like, I've always been anti-abortion, but boy, that gave it right in the gut where it's like, wow, that was a hard movie. Just the falsehood where they say, well, it's about women's health. No, it's really about profits. It's about profits, and it's a great line. She used to work for Planned Parenthood, and there's this great argument. McDonald's, they make, I forget the line, but something like, we give the fries away for undervalue. Where we make the money is on hamburgers. Abortion is where we make our money. Non-profit is a tax status, not a philosophy. I like how they expose, a safe medical procedure. Wow, that is not safe. And then afterwards, I had to do some research. Actually, that is actually quite true. It is not safe, nor is it just a medical procedure. It just puts it in a very graphic way. The other part I really loved is, I was just telling somebody this last night, saying, you should see the movie, we're talking about pro-life. And this person had some suggestions that I thought were horrible. So I said, you should see the movie Unplanned. One of the sub-themes is not just, exposing this, but the sub-theme of there's a right way to be pro-life and a wrong way to be pro-life. And in the movie, shaming people, dressing up as death, that is not pro-life. So when this person had some suggestions, I said, that's not pro-life. That's just trying to shame people. So I thought the movie did a great job of bringing that out. So,
Did
yeah.
you see that in the Catholic News Agency that's on Facebook, where Abby Johnson raised $120,000 to go down and feed the kids at the border? They had like 6,000 diapers, formula.
Oh, she raised money, but no, I didn't because I'm not on Facebook.
Well, she had all these Texas women come down and help her, and it's amazing.
Any movies that you guys really liked, you guys that I didn't see that you want to recommend to other people?
Are you not going to talk about Ballad of Buster Scruggs?
Oh my God, I love that.
The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Now, do you like that? Because I didn't.
Love that movie.
Okay.
Heartbreaking.
Oh, I actually would put that as my third favorite. But here's the odd part. Now, tell me if you think I'm right. Anybody who else saw the Ballad of Buster Scruggs? Don't you think, like, really half the room is going to be thinking, what? What is this? And even I did. Like, it's the Coen brothers, who they are just crazy. The Coen brothers, and it's just like different vignettes. The vignettes tie together. But I loved it. Like it opens with this. Buster Scruggs. That's the first person. It opens with this Buster Scruggs who is this. It's just. It's not only goofy. It's absurd. But so he's this gunslinger who likes to sing. So he reminds me of Deacon Ralph. And Deacon Ralph knows all these cowboy songs. And at one point, this quirky little gunslinger is doing this dance. And then when he gets killed, he does sing this great song. I always knew there was going to be a faster gun. You take up the way of violence, you're going to die by it. And then, let's see, that's one vignette. The other, what's the vignette after that?
The one with the guy with no arms and no legs.
Oh my God, that is so sad. It's this guy with no arms and no legs who can beautifully recite speeches. And he has this caretaker. And you have to understand, it's kind of done funny, but the caretaker, the speeches he gives are all speeches on the right of human dignity. It's a massive popular, it's this odd, so once you realize it's all ones about human dignity, and the caretaker can hear all these speeches. I'm ruining the movie, but it doesn't affect him. Like he hears the speeches, but he doesn't really value life, even though the guy can quote all this great stuff. And in the end, it's this actually, like I think it's a symbol of Absalom. He throws a guy in the river to buy a chicken who can supposedly count. So there's this death. It's a really sad vignette. Then the next vignette is this great one about this miner. And the miner, it's kind of the opposite. He has joy, and he's singing too. And he's singing to God about the beauty of creation. And it starts with like this scene of the fish and the butterflies and this deer in the meadow, and the miner comes walking in. They all scatter. At the very end, they all come back in the same exact position. And that's the point. The miner is there, and he's searching for his gold, and he's digging, and he finds this vein of gold, and this one guy who's a thief, a robber, shoots him. And he has this great line where he says, "You hit nothing." Now, when it means hit nothing, you hit gold or pay dirt, he gets shot. And the miner, he's joyful of creation, but he's a nothing. Once he leaves, everything returns back to the way it is. So when he says, "You hit nothing," that's a great line. And he falls into the water, except this time, unlike the last one, he doesn't die. He has more life, and he does defend himself and go back, and nature returns to the way it was. Like, it's this great, like, we're really nothing. We come, we go, just enjoy life. You have another one of, can I ruin one more? The bank robber. It's a really, Like I love, like let's say you're the bank robber. He's this young man, arrogant. He's going to come in and rob a bank. Well, this old man takes out guns and gets into this battle. Then he runs out. Like it's just so funny. It was like, well, didn't expect that one. And then the bank teller comes running around the corner, except he has all these pans on him. And like, so you pretend like you're shooting at me. So he's running. He's running. He has all these pans, and every time it hits a pan and pings on you. Headshot! Headshot! Knocks him off. And it's just kind of funny and odd. Then he's going to be hung, right? He's going to be hung, and lo and behold, Indians come, and he gets saved at the last moment. And then he gets saved from death, really, 3 times. And the last time he's now going to be hung again, and they're putting the noose around him, and there's a guy next to him. The guy is just crying and wailing, and he turns to him and says, "Your first time getting hung?" And then it has this great ending. And then it ends with suddenly he's seeing this beautiful woman in blue. And it's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. And it has this great quality that if he just would have recognized beauty at the beginning, he would have saved his life. Like, it ends in this kind of sad, like, if you would have noticed her beauty in the beginning, you would have avoided all the silly choices. Does that make it? It's a bizarre, like I watch on Netflix, so I could just watch one vignette per night, because I only get about 20 minutes for TV. So it was perfect, but believe it or not, like it has little buster, even like the vignettes tie together. The next woman, she's in blue, she does find love. Or remember he sold the chicken who could count? The prospector, the prospector, he's getting his breakfast and he takes some eggs out of a nest, and then he feels guilty and he puts 2 back and he says, well, what bird can count anyhow? So they do kind of tie together. But I thought that was, okay. Buster Scruggs, I did like that one, but holy cow, it's bizarre. It is hard. The woman, there's another one, the girl who got rattled, she finds love. Story, she finds love on a wagon train, and it's a really sad one. She finds love, but because she doesn't have hope, she gives up. But she could have had it all. Love, she just needed hope to endure a bad situation.
Well, she was convinced by the guy who said, do this, if things
Oh,
are bad, but instead, and he just went out as if he was going to not worry about his life, not protect it, he just went out to fight, and she could have, if she'd have done the same thing, she'd have been okay.
If she would have had hope, I mean, like, she gave up too quick and she could have had it all. Yeah, you like, hope is not logical. Okay, sorry, but it could be very, I have to admit, half the room would probably find it boring because you have to kind of get into what is it trying to say. It's still a good story, even like it's a good story. She finds love, but it's a good story to say, yeah, without hope, no love will survive. Too much fear.
Did you? I can't remember the name. Did you see that one about the nanny in Mexico? And it was black and
Roma.
white?
No, I didn't watch Roma.
Yeah.
Anybody else watch Roma? I think it won, or was not. Was it good?
Yeah, I thought it was quite good.
I didn't see Roma. I will eventually. It'll come on Netflix.
I thought it was boring.
Oh, it is on Netflix? I think it might be slow. Not enough violence in Roma? No aliens? All right, well, anyhow, I just like this larky class on movies, just looking at themes. So, anyhow, so next month, what are we doing next month? Oh, so it's kind of Catholicism 101. So I want to thank, Karen, thank you for wearing a dress today and putting out coffee and donuts. And I see you guys later.